Hi, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to this new episode of the RiseUp Radio. And today we have a very, very special guest with us today. Her name is Dessalen Wood. Dessalen, thank you so much for joining and welcome to the RiseUp Radio.
Thank you for having me on the podcast. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Folks, quick introductions. My name is Ashish, and I'm the founder and CEO of Risely. Risely is an AI copilot for leadership development, and we are bringing hyper-personalized learning at scale for every manager in organization. But more about that later. Today, it's all about Deslin and her leadership journey. So she's currently the chief people officer at Syntax, and she has had more than 2 decades of experience in the HR and L&D space. Deslin, that's really, really impressive, I must say. And you have been, part of several organizations and some of Canada's top organizations, across your career. And she's a passionate advocate of human potential and also aligning people development with business outcomes. I think that's really core to her. So, Deslin, welcome to the show formally, and may I invite you to talk a little bit about your profile, the work that you're doing, and a little brief about your career because we're going to go deep into that in this discussion with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction. I've had a really interesting career, and I know we're going to get more into the details on that. Because most people, in the mid to late '90s, when I started in what was then human resources, didn't understand what it was or that it was a career, and so
Yep.
it's evolved so much since that time. And in that, I've also evolved, my
Mm.
approach as the role has changed and the industry and the world has changed. So I guess to give you a little overview of myself, I came to human resources out of having a psychology degree. Initially, I thought I was going to do child psychology. And like many people, your life sort of takes another turn as you finish school and you're
Yeah.
working. And I happen to have been working in a retail sector
Mm.
during my degree. And that's where I ended up pursuing my career. So a little bit about me is I currently am the Chief People Officer at Syntax. We're a global IT and professional services organization based in Montreal, which is really wonderful because I live in Montreal and it's been a long time since I've had a Montreal-based role. And our company spans, in 15 countries, and we provide, all sorts of cloud, ERP, security, and managed services. And so I'm very, very fortunate right now to actually be in a different industry than where I spent the majority of my 2 decades.
Yeah.
And I moved from the retail and service industry
Mm.
to a brief stint in software and now into IT and professional services.
Mm.
So I've had the good fortune of finding a wonderful career and then also being able to move industries, which is
Mm.
something a lot of people look to do. And
Yeah.
it's challenging, but it also is super invigorating at this point
Correct.
in my career to get a fresh start.
Correct. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that detailed introduction, Desilin. I really love that. Now I'm gonna go right back, right? Psychology. You wanted to be a child psychologist, and then you ended up
Yeah.
being in HR. I would say it's
Yes.
not very different because a lot of times employees are like children. But jokes apart, what attracted you towards HR, or did it happen accidentally?
It's that I call it accidental careers. So many people have accidental careers, and I feel like it's so challenging when you have youth. My children are at that age where they're in university and looking for their careers, and
Hmm.
people think there's like a clear path from
Hmm.
what you're interested in when you're young through school to your career, when in
Yeah.
fact there's so many different things available that you're not aware of.
Correct.
And I had done psychology because I was really interested in that field. And I thought of working at the time with the children with autism, which I'd say it
Hmm.
was in early '90s.
Hmm.
So that was actually a very, very new field. And
Hmm.
I had the opportunity to work one day a week
Hmm.
at a hospital with
Hmm.
children who were impacted by autism. And I was able to see, I did it for 2 years, one day a week, that it really wasn't necessarily where I was happiest.
Hmm.
So I was very fortunate to get to test it out before I pursued it.
Hmm.
And at the same time, I was working because I lived on my own in a retail store selling bathing suits. Probably
Okay.
sounds a little bit strange, but bathing suits are a very emotional thing for women to buy. And so I
Yeah.
was in a lot of very challenging situations with people around body image and self worth.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I really felt like there had to be a better way have an experience which was about, your body image and who you are. So I devised a way to sell bathing suits that really I found helped people feel good about themselves, and ended up being the top salesperson in the chain. And so there was a
Wow.
40 store chain. I was the number one salesperson, and I had this entire methodology around selling. And what I thought, here I was working, doing the work with children, and there I was, this bathing suit selling maven.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, I think I'm happier here, which is it's a big decision to make. And so I wrote a proposal to become a sales trainer, to bring my methodology to the rest of the chain. And the leaders of the chain actually rejected it. And so this is an interesting story that I can say, which is that most of my life I've proposed roles for myself and I don't always get them. But I usually think, what's the job I think I could do? And I have it proposed, and I did it professionally. I worked in Quebec, and although I'm fluently bilingual, I had it professionally translated. Like I went for it, and I was 22 years old. And I got told, you know what, you can stay and be a store manager, but we don't have a role as a trainer. And I really felt at that time, this is not what I want to do. So I was able to take my proposal and send it to other retail organizations. And one of them, a Canadian organization called Reitmans, gave me a chance, and they made me a training and recruitment coordinator and pulled me from the stores into their home office at a very, very junior position. And that's where I started my career in what became human resources, but it was really in training and recruiting salespeople.
Awesome. So this is a wonderful start, right? Charting your own way using psychology, which is your field, to create an impact on an organization. One organization rejects it, but other one laps it, right? So somebody's lost at somebody else's game, obviously.
Yeah. If they could see me now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you could go back to them and say, you know what, this is what you missed.
Well, you know what I think, Ashish, is so interesting about career journeys is that people see somebody at a successful point and think that there was a clear path.
Yeah.
And they often say, what did you do so I can do it? And I'll say, what I did is I proposed a lot of roles for myself. I looked for needs that I thought I was the right person to fill, and then I would invent a role, propose it, and then see what happens. And what I often tell people is like, maybe you end up getting 50% of what you expected, but at least it's closer to who you are and what you want to do.
Correct.
But I never sat back and waited for the right role to come to me. I really went out and either found one.
You did something about it.
Oh yes, and I have even other stories. How I went from training to HR is probably going to make you laugh even more. So you know how I got into training?
So why don't we hear it out? Let's hear that out, Dessalen. Go ahead, please tell us. Yeah.
So this is another thing: is you need to also be aware of the market and what the market is looking for in order to drive your career. And at the time, I really loved training. And, if you ask my CEO right now, he'll tell you I still do. It's my favorite thing to do. But at the time, there were a lot of big training companies coming in, and companies were buying these programs, having them rolled out by third party, and the training team ended up being more administrative and managing the external training. And so I was in this very large retailer, one of Canada's largest specialty retailers. And after about a couple of years, they brought in one of these American programs. And so the long and short of it is that I was able to work with that provider, see what it is to create mass training and roll it out. But I didn't want to administrate somebody else's material. I like creating my own, and I like facilitating myself. And so I started to think, well, if training isn't really a future here, what does the person next door to me do? And she was the HR manager. And at the time, we were making a training program for store managers. And one of the modules I was developing it was HR management. And as I developed the module, I started to think maybe I could do that job. That looks interesting. And then I realized that every company has to have an HR person, but not every company has a trainer or a training department. And a lot of them were outsourcing training. And I thought, if I don't want to be outsourced, or I don't want to be sort of on the B team in this, what was called human resources. And what do I want to do is I want to do that job. So lo and behold, I had a maternity leave, which in Canada is a year. And at the time, my parents were both more in the academic world, said, hey, go back to school. And I thought, I don't know if I want to go back to school. I went to the McGill bookstore. I bought the textbook. It was called HR Management in Canada. Big textbook. I read it. I highlighted it. And then I said, I'm just going to go apply for HR manager jobs now.
That was your education right there.
Yes. I literally highlighted an HR manager's manual, and then went and interviewed. And I was fortunate enough that a company called HBC, the Bay, it's Canada's oldest retailer, it's a large department store, hired me as their HR manager for Eastern Canada, which was a chunk of the country. And it was my first job. And I really took that 2 years that I was working there, it was very difficult, as my 2-year degree. I said, I'm going to the school of life instead of school. And if the school of life teaches you very, very hard lessons very fast.
Nothing better than that. This is nothing better than that, right? I mean, real life
Yes.
learning is the best. Yeah, sorry.
Yes. So I'm just to say that. And the last thing I'll say about that experience, even though it wasn't a great fit for me, it was a very antiquated business model with a very challenging management team. And I knew right away I probably wasn't going to be able to stay there for very long. I decided to ask as many questions as I could and learn as much as I could. And my boss at the time had told me he'd never met anybody who asked as many questions as I did. I don't think there was ever a call or a meeting that my hand wasn't up and I wasn't saying, why? Why are we doing this? How do we do that? Why do we make that decision? And I literally was just learning everything I needed so that I would actually know how to do this job when that job was finished. And when I did choose to go, I was able to take on the role of HR manager for a retailer called the Children's Place that was coming from the US into Canada. And I took over as their leader of HR for Canada, which is 10 provinces, which was, a big leap from my other job where I was very much part of a very big team. And that was my big change, so that I became a generalist from a specialist. So that was my voyage from bathing suits to legitimate HR professional of the entire country.
So you've already told me two pivotal moments in your career, right? Were there any other pivotal moments that shaped your journey? So do tell us about that as well.
Well, I would even say that so pivotal moments are great because you need to be aware of when they happen so that you can make them happen again. Nothing, everything is intentional. And if you look at your story and you think you were lucky or at the right place at the right time, then you've missed some of the great decisions of your life. I think for me, what it is that wherever I go, including Children's Place and anywhere I went after, I always am very clear with my supervisor what it is I want, where I want to go, what I'm looking for. And that can take a lot of courage because someone can tell you they don't see you that way or they don't think you're ready. And at the same time, it lets them know that you're always looking for more. And so by always putting myself out there and talking about what I'll do next if that job comes up, tends to have made the next thing start to happen for me. So I would say the most pivotal moment from there is we moved to Toronto during the financial crisis, 2008, 2009. And at that time I was very nervous to find a job in a city that had far too many openings. And I applied everywhere, and I ended up getting a job in a financial services company in the insurance industry. And it's really a place I don't belong, just so you know. But I was very concerned to move to such an expensive city with no job. And so I took the job, even though during the interviews, I knew each interview, you're supposed to be more excited about a role. I was getting less excited. I was like, I'm not going to fit here. And from a fashion industry, I can tell you something that those of you who understand, fashion at work, you had to wear a suit 5 days a week, even on Friday. That should have known that I was not going to be happy. So, I buy a new wardrobe. I show up and I'm like, you're going to be insurance industry HR, director. And it was just a disaster. It was the worst place for me. I ended up staying for 7 weeks. And one of the things I can say, because I'm laughing about it now, is that if you put yourself in a position that you're not going to be successful and you let yourself stay there, you're doing a disservice because it chips away at your confidence and it starts to make you doubt your capabilities. And in the end, you become the person that people think you are, even though you're not. And I was really able to see that the people around me who were in that position were not there because they were happy. They were there because they thought that they couldn't do anything better than what they were doing. And so it was a big move to not stay, considering the environment for jobs at the time. So I'd say that was a really pivotal moment, was not to
To
let
taking
yourself
that
stay in
hard
a,
decision. Yeah, taking that hard
yes,
decision, right? Yeah, it's not
yes,
easy. Yeah,
yes.
I know.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy, and not to doubt your gut. If you're
Right.
in the wrong place, you're in the wrong place.
Absolutely.
Get out.
Absolutely. Cool. You know what? I'm going to shift gears now and I'm going to
Sure.
talk a little bit about the mistakes that you made. I'm sure you have made
Yes.
mistakes. So do tell us a few mistakes that you made during your career as well. And these could be any
Mhm.
mistakes. These could be not only related to career, but when you became a manager for the first time, how did you manage
Just all
teams?
the kinds of mistakes. You know,
Exactly.
it, I think, there's such interesting things that we learn from like your first time managing people
Yep.
to your first time managing leaders to
Yep.
understanding how to give feedback up, down, and all around.
Mm,
So
mm.
when you ask someone a mistake, it's one of my favorite questions to ask in an interview is tell me about like the biggest mistake you've made. And I always have a concern when a person sort of goes, I can't think of anything.
Mm.
Whereas my favorite candidate is one that's like pauses,
Yep.
looks up, and then comes back and says, "There's so many. I'm just trying to pick the right one."
Which one? Yeah.
That's the best answer. And they're smiling because they're like, "Oh, I got good ones." So
Correct.
I would say, if I look at mistakes that I have made from, at the beginning, I made the early first mistakes people make when you become a manager to one of your peers.
Mm.
And I created a class. So a lot of my courses and the work I do is based on my own life experience.
Hmm. Hmm.
And one of my life experiences is that when you're very friendly with your colleagues and then you become a supervisor,
Yep.
the hardest thing
The
is to
dynamics
figure out.
changes completely, right?
Exactly. And it's really challenging because these are people that you probably used as outlets to frustration and you
Correct.
overshared. And now suddenly you have to sort of show up as somebody who's allowed to be their leader. And it's hard because they've seen you maybe, behave in a way that's it's questionable or say things that
Correct.
are questionable. And now you're saying, no, everything's great. And I think that was one of my biggest hurdles at the beginning was, regretting past self's comments and behavior because now it was going to chip at my credibility as being their leader. And
Yeah.
so, the comments that I've made for leaders ever since coming is the minute you're thinking of moving, you have to start to change who you're going to for advice and who you're sharing things with. And you should always be choosing somebody who's at your level or higher
Yeah.
and never anybody who's slightly more
Mm,
junior to you,
mm, mm.
because the more you do that, the longer or harder it will be to get promoted in your own team. And so choosing an appropriate outlet and having that separation was something that I learned because at the beginning in my first promotions, I think
Mm.
people challenged my credibility to be a leader at that time.
Right. Cool. So this was very early on, right? And
Yes,
then you
that's an
said,
early mistake. The
yeah,
later one,
yeah.
I think there's one mistake that it this actually came to me reading this book after I saw this woman Liz Wiseman. I saw her speak in
Mm,
person, and then I bought her book Multipliers.
mm.
And I always saw myself as somebody that really helped people develop and really helped people grow. And in there, she talked about there's people who multiply, basically who bring more to
Hmm.
people, and there's other people who diminish, they take away.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, I'm a multiplier for sure.
Mm,
And then
mm,
there's this list of accidental diminishing behaviors. And one of the things that I did with my team is I gave out the book. And that
mm,
at an offsite, I asked people what my accidental diminishing behavior was, and we each did it. And because everybody was doing it, you had to pick one.
mm,
And what I found out my accidental diminishing behavior was something I thought was a strength, which is really awful,
mm.
which is when people are struggling, I would tend to try to de-escalate the stress by telling them it was not a big deal, to stay
Okay.
calm, it's all
Okay.
fine, don't make a
Yeah.
lot out of nothing, we're going to be
Right.
okay. And I thought that this was my job. My job, if somebody brings me fire, is to put the fire out.
Douse the
But
fire. Yeah.
exactly, and essentially, I would not even listen if somebody started to complain about something. I would try to shut down that complaint with like a pep talk.
Hmm.
And I thought that I'm so motivating and I'm keeping them from being negative. But what I was really doing is not listening,
Not listening.
not listening. I'm not listening to what's really going on. I'm not listening to the root cause of the problem. I'm not solving anything. I'm just telling you to stop complaining, to put a smile on your face, and everything's going to be all right. And that actually is not a helpful behavior from leaders. And it keeps you from actually figuring out and getting in there with people. And so hearing that I did that was hard to hear because I'm
Yeah.
very positive.
Yeah.
But it was really important for me to let people vent, even if I find it sometimes frustrating to listen to,
Yeah. Yeah.
and listen to the underlying cause and then offer a real solution.
Mm.
And the solution is not telling people the problem isn't that bad. So
Mm.
that was a lesson my team taught me
Very
in life
powerful.
and my career.
Very, very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
that. Right. So this was the second one, right? And have there been any moments in your journey that you say that, you had a perception about a manager and then that perception totally changed, right? So if that happened, then what was the perception before and what was the new perception?
That's such a great point because I think that there are certain types of people that tend to align really well with you, and there's certain types of people that make you uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And when you say, for me, I've often uh, had a real, apprehension around people who are very, very detailed
Mm-hmm.
and, really want to go down in the onion all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm somebody who more like knows the surface, maybe one
Yeah.
or two layers deep, but
Hmm.
I don't necessarily feel the need to go all the way
Yeah.
down to the core.
Hmm.
And so I would sometimes feel that, in a conversation, I was being attacked by somebody who is getting very detailed with me, as opposed to seeing that they're bringing a different perspective
Hmm.
and they just could want me to be successful, but they're coming at it differently. Here's an
Yeah.
example I'll give
Yeah.
you, which is a really great one. Again, I use it in training because anything
Hmm.
that I've lived I put in a class. That's
That's the way.
the good
Yeah.
thing of the good thing about a bad experience is it's a great lesson in a course.
Absolutely. And for others as well, right? Without making
Oh,
mistakes.
for sure. So think about this. So think about if you had done a 25-page PowerPoint, you put in all this time and you sent it out to a group of people, and that person, the one that you think, always is picking on you and is always calling you out,
Hmm.
sends you a one-line email. And the one-line email is like, there's a typo on slide 24 with it highlighted. What are you
Hmm.
going to think? Like, honestly, you're going to be like, oh my God, this person lives to just find fault in me. Like, could they? And you would probably forward it to other people and say, can you believe this? And you would be putting all sorts of faces on it. And you'd be saying, this person has no life. Why are they bought? This is how you'd feel. So think of
Yeah.
me with this person. And
Hmm.
I joke because in my training sessions, I call the person frowny face. Like I make a
Hmm.
face that's like an upside,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I say this person who basically feels like their whole life is just to pick on you.
Yep.
So everybody has someone in their mind.
Yep.
Now I'm going to tell you the same story. You have the person who's been your biggest fan,
Hmm.
has pushed you forward in your career, has opened up every door they can for you.
Hmm.
You send them the 25-page PowerPoint
Hmm.
and they reply with a one-line email. There's a typo on slide 24. Exactly,
Hmm.
with a screenshot.
Hmm. Hmm.
Same message.
Same message.
And what are you going to reply to that person? Oh my God,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Yep. I know.
Oh my God, thank you for
Yep.
having my back. I so
Yep.
appreciate the amount of
Yep.
time you took to go in there. Thank
Yep.
you so much for making sure there's nothing wrong. Same response, same message, completely different reaction. So, what I had to think of when you're talking about that frowny face person that I had in my life is if I just flip the script that this person is just really detailed and just wants to let me know there's a mistake, and maybe there is no motive to ruin my entire life in that email, I
Right.
could see them as an ally. And I was able to change my relationship with the person and have them really be an ally because I think they never were an enemy. I just felt so intimidated by the way they approached work that I had decided that that's what was happening in our relationship, but it
Because
wasn't
they
real.
had a strength that was not a strength for you, right? Maybe that's why you feel
Yes.
threatened. And if you look at it from the other side, that is also a
Yeah.
complementary skill that they are able to bring to you as an ally, right?
Exactly. Like if I saw them as my editor
Yeah,
and not my enemy,
correct.
then I actually send them things and say, "Can you find my
Even
typos?" As
beforehand,
opposed to
yeah, review it and let me
right,
know, and before you send it to others, right?
yeah, and I had a very good relationship with this person, and closer to years later, people would ask me, "I don't know how you work so well with this person," and I felt like I've just decided that they're a good person who wants me to succeed, and I've decided that even if their delivery is maybe not the best,
Yep.
I'm going to forgive the delivery and see the motive as good. And I think that's something I really have learned is to
Yep.
not create stories around people's
Right. Right.
behavior just because it's threatening to me.
Correct. Awesome. Well, these are some very, very powerful examples. Listen, thank you for sharing them. Now, my next question to you is more around young HR professionals. I think the way you have
Mhm.
explained your journey, right? And you have been very courageous. You have been very clear in terms of what you want. And a lot of times people are not clear in terms of what they want. And even if they are, they're not really courageous to go and ask for it, right? Uh,
Mhm.
what advice would you give to the young HR professionals right now out there? How can they actually shape their careers and become more strategic to their organizations rather than getting stuck in the transactional that they find typically themselves in, right?
It's a great question to ask because, as you get more seasoned in your role, you get to a chance to really design more what the work you're going to do, and therefore you have a lot more agency. So, what makes somebody who's junior in their career feel they have it? And one of the exercises that I've done with people especially when I start a role or somebody who's very transactional, and I even was able to do this at Syntax. So some of the HR business partners here if they're listening, would remember
Mm,
this is I have people put down like a functional analysis. It's basically, what are you doing with your time?
mm,
Because we often hear that people are caught up in admin and they're not adding value. And then your own customer says they're not getting value. And the person themselves says, I'm not satisfied in my role. And so you want to know what's going on. So a really interesting thing to do is to have people show you over a 2-week period exactly what they do all day, as opposed to guessing. Because in truth, most people's roles have a lot more, we call it work around work. Like they're not
yeah,
actually doing something valuable. They're just doing stuff. And we can easily say, you need to be more effective or you need to be
mm,
spending more time here and there. I like to first see what reality looks like. How full is the
mm,
cup? And what I did with my HR business partners, which is something that I've done with myself, is you make like
mm,
a circle time pie, a graph after with
mm.
what the percent of times people are spending doing
Right,
different things.
right.
And what I've done is say, okay, that's current state. And then I'm saying, all right, the job, if it's done really well and adding the most value, here's what the time would look like. It's the future state circle. It's like, this is what I want to do. And
Right.
I've even done this with people just on the paper where I just have them estimate. Show me what you're currently doing and show me what you wish you could be doing.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when we look there, it's not necessarily changing your entire role. It's really just lessening some of the low value work and increasing the time. And so the message I've given to my HR professionals is that, you know, you need to be really intentional about what you would do if you had 2, 3, 4, 5 hours a week more.
Mm, mm.
Don't assume because one pain has gone away that valuable exercises and activities go in there.
Correct.
In
Correct.
fact, clutter expands to fill the space available.
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
you haven't marked that time for a value activity, you won't do it. So whether it's coaching leaders, let's say that that's
Mm,
what somebody wants to do
mm,
and they want to be doing more of that. We'll say, okay, if we can lessen this piece of what you do, we find either some support or we get rid of something or we shift
mm,
responsibilities. Then I'm saying, okay, so how do we start? Is it one coaching meeting per week with your 3 top leaders? It's only an
yeah,
hour
yeah.
each. What are you going to do? And as people change and actually physically do something different, they become something different.
Mm, mm.
So the biggest thing I would say is if you're waiting for the irritant to go away, for the valuable activity to come
It's
in,
never gonna
doesn't
happen that
happen.
way. Yeah,
Right. Just do it. Just say,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I had one, and I would say, my other voice was anything of value you need to do it before 12 in the day. This sounds kind of crazy, but once noon hits, your day is usually somebody
Yeah,
else's.
that's
So put one high value activity in morning. And as you see that transformation, your own confidence and your ability to deliver more value comes as a result that you are delivering more value. But you won't get the confidence that you can change your job by waiting for it to change.
correct.
And so my view is just squeeze in one different relationship. And what I think is the most valuable thing an HR person can do is have the business value them as much as they value somebody who's on their team. And
It's a
so
very, very powerful
that,
tool,
yeah,
Dessalen. Extremely powerful. Awesome. Let's jump gears and
yes,
talk about AI a little bit, right? And
yes, yes,
we can't ignore AI, right? What is
no.
your view on AI in the workplace? Do you see it as an opportunity, a threat? Uh, what do you think?
Well, I'm really fortunate, I have to say right now, because at Syntax, we're a tech company and we provide AI as a solution to our customers. And one of the wonderful things our CTO and CEO did is that right at I wouldn't say the beginning, but right when AI was really hitting
Yeah.
hard, their challenge was let's do it on ourselves first. And so I've had a really fortunate experience working directly with my CTO and their team on developing AI that actually works to support the people and culture team. A lot of different environments would not necessarily prioritize a support function for that kind of development. And so why I think I'm excited about it is, first of all, there is too much to do and there's not enough time to do it. And any tool that can offer you a faster way to do something could never be seen as a threat in my world. I think the idea is that people come to AI with a scarcity model, which is that there's not quite enough to go around. And if something takes something from me, then I'm going to lose it.
I'm going to lose
as
something.
Opposed, yes, and I've got to protect what I have, or else I might not be necessary. And my view is that if you really understand from my time exercise, all the things you do,
it's going to help you change the pie totally, right?
It does. It's like if you're like, oh my God, there's 55% of my time. And just so you know, before we had a good HRIS system, we're on SuccessFactors now, but before we had one, my team was 60 to 82% administrative tasks. So of course they weren't seen as transformational partners, that because the systems were taking so much of their time. So if now I look down and say, okay, we reduced that, but maybe we reduced it and there's still 40% of time spent on tasks. To me, if we can then be the driver of what part of our job AI is going to do, we're going to love AI. If we're thinking, if I give AI anything, it's going to take my whole job, then you're going to start to have that scarcity mentality and you won't be partnering to develop the best AI version of your job so you can go do a different job.
Yeah,
no, and absolutely. That's how I see. So we have been developing different AI agents for our team. One of them is an onboarding bot, but we have, I would say, a really good relationship here with AI because we've seen it brought into the organization as a savior and not as a villain. And I think from a people and culture standpoint, we have to have people view that they will be able to add more value and be more productive as a result of AI. Does it mean in future that our workforce will change? Does it mean that we possibly won't always look to headcount as a solution to every single problem we have? Yes, it will. Do I think it's going to change the fact right now of your job? I think the only thing it's going to do is help you. But I do think in the future, when we look at the work that needs to be done, we need to look at AI as a possible avenue to get that work done. And a lot of managers' default is to add more headcount. And that's something I think we can be more thoughtful about.
That's going to change for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you have been in the learning space for a very, very long time, right? What do you think about AI revolutionizing learning, right? Because our thesis is very simple, that I think AI can really personalize and scale the way traditional modes of learning can't, right? But what's your thought on that?
Well, I think AI is already teaching us so much. I have I have children who are in university and in graduate, and there's so many opportunities for them to converse with AI to help them have more deep understanding of a subject and have more critical thinking. And so if you can take away the time in learning of just accessing information and finding the right information, and if that part's gone, then you can spend more time digging into the knowledge and then challenging the AI to integrate different kinds of thinking and push out new ways of doing work. And so I think when it comes to learning, if we have amazing content and then we have the ability to challenge that content to integrate our company's thoughts, your thoughts, the worldviews, and the content model, you're going to end up having this framework of learning that ingests your way of thinking, your company's methodologies, and the world's best practices. And so I see that there is a lot of room for that in learning to allow you to I would say interplay with content, which I think people are doing, but not quite at the level they could be.
Yeah. No, I think we're just getting started. I think this is just beta zero version of what we're seeing. I think it's going to change rapidly and for good for sure. I think we're just opening up the first layer of the onion, as you said. Cool. I think we're coming towards the end of our discussion. Dessalen, I have a
Mhm.
few rapid fire questions for you, right?
Sure.
And I'm going to throw them at you. The first thing that comes to your mind, just tell us, okay?
Okay.
Not a lot of thinking. There are a couple of controversial questions as well, so definitely keep that in mind. So, what's the one thing that you definitely keep in mind when you're hiring somebody in your team?
Oh,
What's a must-have?
okay. That's a really one thing I keep in touch. I think it's important that the person have, I call it a solid core. I know you probably might think this is
Hmm.
an interesting thing to think.
Yeah.
A solid core meaning that, executive function and critical thinking come from someone who's inherently calm
Hmm.
and able to be present and listen. So I'm really looking for an energy, but not a frantic energy, which a lot of people find is very like, oh, wow, that person's
Hmm.
so energetic. I'm looking for the core of the person to be very centered and calm so that they are listening to a question, they're answering it very fully, and I see them processing and really thinking, because that's something that I think is inherent in your wiring. And I think when it comes to people and culture, and you need to trust and have credible people who can make
Yeah.
difficult decisions, I
Yeah.
need to feel that the center of who they are is very grounded, which is that's something I really look for.
You know what? This is the word that was coming to my mind when I was listening to you, which is grounded, right? So grounded and
Yes.
then analytical and then responding with a lot of thought. I think that's what I
Mm-hmm.
gathered. Awesome.
Yes.
So what's a deal breaker that you would definitely not have in your team?
Oh, in hiring? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
These are good questions. A deal breaker for me. I, yeah. So I'll tell you one because I always have a story. Okay, I'm a
Yeah.
storyteller. I
Sure.
remember asking somebody, what kind of people rub you the wrong way? Which is like a
Yeah.
very whatever question.
Yeah.
It's not certainly the top five. And the person answered really quickly, stupid people. And for me, this was a deal breaker because
Yeah.
everybody in a different moment is seen
You have
as
been stupid and you are stupid in different ways, or one way or the other, right?
listen, when I'm learning, I don't come across maybe as a rock star. Learning is
Right.
messy, learning
Right.
is hard, and you
Right.
have to be open to letting people learn in front of you without bringing a lot of shame to them.
And
So
no
I would say,
judgment. No judgment,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. So I find that people who tend to think, generally it's very, very bright people, they don't have a lot of patience for other people's learning and other people's growth. And when I sense that impatience and that arrogance,
Yeah.
I'm always nervous when somebody's introduced to me as being brilliant. This
Yeah.
probably sounds crazy.
Yeah.
When somebody says, oh, this person's brilliant, I think, okay, so they're probably difficult. They don't listen, and they're likely, I have all these paradigms that come on. I
Eccentric.
really want,
Yeah.
so for me, a deal breaker is just somebody who has no patience for others and no
Yeah.
empathy for others, and can't create an environment where others can find their own way to grow. For me, that's a deal breaker. If I find somebody who has that level of arrogance and impatience, I'm done.
Makes sense. All right. So, what do you do in your pastime? What's your favorite activity?
Yeah, my favorite activity. Well, it's great you asked that. I'm a mother of three older children, and I
Okay.
also have a dog, which I'm very, very devoted to. And then the other things that I really love to do is I'm a huge fan of podcasts. No surprise, I'm
There you
ingesting
go.
them all day long. It's my favorite form of content because you're learning and being entertained all at the
Correct.
same time while you're
Correct.
multitasking.
Yeah.
What could be better, right?
Nothing.
So I think that I'm a creative curator of podcasts for my own learning. And I think the other thing I really love to do is actually things like this, like public speaking
Hmm.
conferences,
Hmm.
really, pushing my own thinking creativity to bring content to other people and culture leaders. I
Hmm.
think that keeps you really focused on learning and growing and
Yeah.
never comfortable in your own knowledge. Because if you can't bring value to them, then you should sit down.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm constantly reading and looking into and listening for new content and new ideas, and then thinking about what's my approach to that and my own message around it. And I think that's one of my pastimes at this point in my career.
Awesome. Awesome. So, I hope we have added the RiseUp Radio to your playlist as well now.
I'm very excited to have it.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's why I was so excited to
Yeah.
join you today.
Cool. Last question. Let's
Yes.
say you're stuck on an island, and which leader, historical, hypothetical, would you definitely want to have with you? And there's nobody else. I mean, the only person is that leader with you on that island?
My gosh, that leader, the person that has really motivated and inspired you. I'm going to tell you that there's no one person that comes on mind as
Okay.
like, I thought you were going to ask me about a song, which like what
Okay.
playlist? No, but no,
Yeah.
I'm not going to, I'm just saying that this is a tougher and a better question.
Okay.
I look back and I think of the kind of leaders, whether it's leaders of companies or leaders of departments or politicians. And I'm going to tell you that the people who have most impressed me are the people who probably least impressed me when I met them. I think it's an interesting thing,
Okay.
which is that somebody who's very charismatic and comes across, takes up a lot of room, generally I find has less to offer me than somebody who I see really processing that and taking
Mhm.
it in. And I'm going to bring up, right here at Syntax, our founder is still involved and works with
Mhm.
us. His name is Michael Ettinson. And I have been so impressed watching a person who started this company in 1972 be in the company right now. And we
Yeah.
still work on new projects. And he has so much energy and perspective. But the other thing I'll tell you, and this has impressed me when I first met him, is that we were in Germany and I was very jet lagged and I just wanted to go to bed so badly, and there was a stream of people waiting to chat with him after dinner, and not once did he look tired or cut anyone off, and he just let them each come and talk to him.
Yeah.
And I just looked over at him and I thought, shame on me. I'm tired and I just want to go lie down and I'm drained. And
Yeah.
here he is being
How is he able
so,
to do that? Yeah.
yeah, and he just has this endless energy to give to the next generation,
Yeah.
and so when I think of someone who's really impressed me, it really has been Michael in his commitment to this organization. After having been so successful, he's here because he loves it, and he
Mm.
really loves the people here. And he's actually, worked with me and taught me a great deal. And so I would say right now, I've been very, very moved watching somebody with that much success at this point in their career still being so generous with
Awesome.
their time.
Awesome. And one leader that you definitely would not want to have with you, somebody you detest.
No, I don't want to get political right now, so I won't say anything there. But I am a Canadian, so So what can I say to you right now? I'd say that a leader that I really challenged. I did have a leader that spent a lot of time talking to me about how toxic everybody else was. And
Hmm.
it was really very, very damaging to
Hmm.
have a leader
Hmm.
telling you how many people in the company were really bad people. And
Hmm.
I think as a leader, we have to be so careful to somebody
Yeah.
who's impressionable to talk very negatively about other senior people on the
Correct.
team, thinking that you're confident, but really what it's doing is it's causing the person to feel like hopeless in an
Yep.
organization.
Yep.
And so if I think of a leader that I would never want, it's a person who brings all their baggage and dumps it on their team and then expects their team to have any level of motivation or optimism left for the
Hmm.
organization. And so that's one of the things I'm very, very cautious about, because we love chatting with our colleagues and we love sharing things. But I do know that there was a point in my career where that really made me feel quite hopeless.
Super, super, super. Thank you so much, Dessalen. This was a lovely chat. I had a wonderful time. I'm sure our audience is going to love this chat as well.
I hope so. And thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Well, there you have it, folks. Dessalen, if people want to connect with you, can they just reach out to you on LinkedIn? Is that the preferred
For
way to
sure.
connect?
I'm the only Dessalen Wood on LinkedIn, so you can't not find me. And of course, I will always respond if somebody sends me a message, and I'd be very happy to get their connections and hear from them.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, folks. I'm sure you're going to have a wonderful time listening to this podcast. And until next time, I'll see you with a new episode of the RiseUp Radio. But till then, you folks take care and be safe. Bye bye.
Thank you.